Here is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth about bankruptcy. Boom.
One day I want to find someone who sees the world like me.
What's going on, people? Ben and Brittany here from benandbrittany.net. And today we're talking about bankruptcy. It's something that our family has been through, and we know the harsh truth, the harsh reality, and the goods and the bads that come along with it.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So Brittany is the one that actually experienced a full-fledged bankruptcy for reasons that were in her past marriage, a lot of financial reasons that got tied up in that. It was really ended up being your only escape, kind of. Right?
Yeah. So bankruptcy should always be your absolute last resort. And I'll just give you a quick background on mine. Ben and I have talked about my story a lot, so we won't go into that too much, but long story, super short, got divorced. With that divorce, my name was still associated with a lot of debt that I did not help create in my previous marriage. And there was only 3 ways that I could get off of that debt. One is I would pay it off by myself. B, I would have to file bankruptcy.
You said 1 and then B.
Oh, did I? Can we start over?
Keep going. Sorry. Crack me up.
Oh. No, well, now I'm self-conscious.
You want to start the whole podcast over? Just tell them about your bankruptcy.
Okay.
We're still camera shy, guys.
This is super, well, it's stressful because I want to make sure I get all the facts.
You don't want to mess anything up.
I don't want to mess it up. So let's, rewind. A. I would have to pay it all off by myself, and it was over $20,000. B, right?
Yep.
Would be to file bankruptcy. C would be to file a police report for identity theft because I didn't co-sign some of the debt that I was on.
Yeah, and there's a whole string of bullshit that would go along with that.
So not something.
Option A and option C weren't relevant. They weren't options.
Well, and C would have just been, that would have made co-parenting really difficult.
Yeah, because their biological father is still very much in the picture, and he's a good dad. So we didn't want to do anything that was going to affect the kids. So that was not an option immediately.
Right. So I attempted option A, and I paid off about $4,000 worth of debt on my own. This was debt that was just in my name. That had accumulated because during the marriage I tried paying on the $20,000 and I couldn't. So everything from there just kind of snowballed. I was using a credit card to buy diapers and formula because all of my money was tied up in debt. And that, amongst other reasons, led to the divorce. Yeah. And anyway, I paid down $4,000 worth of debt within 3 months. I was living with my parents with my 2 children. My parents graciously allowed me to live with them for free. So I didn't have to pay rent. I hardly even had to buy groceries. They were truly doing everything that they could. You
were just trying so hard to do anything to avoid bankruptcy.
Yeah.
You were like, I will live at home. I will eat ramen noodles as long as I can make these credit card payments and not have to file for bankruptcy.
Right.
So that's where you were.
Yes. And I was like, a lot of that contributed to how I got down to just 103 pounds. Because I legitimately did not have an appetite because I was so stressed out. I was going through a bad divorce, the possibility of filing bankruptcy, just a whole change in my life, working on a change in a career. It was all just it was a very hard time in my life. So spent all this time trying to pay down this debt, and I was super excited. I was seeing this number go down on my end, but I didn't know how my ex-husband was doing on the debt that was in his name that I was co-signed on, because I actually, silly as it is, I'm co-signed on this crazy amount of debt that I didn't even know existed until a year prior because I happened to check the mail that day, and I had no access. I couldn't log in. I couldn't call the lender that this was through and get any information as to if payments were being made on time, how much was left. It was seriously just the most frustrating thing ever. But I would get letters in the mail whenever payments were not made on time. So my ex-husband was supposed to be making these payments, and he'd make them a month late. And it didn't matter that I had paid off $4,000 in debt on my own. My credit score was plummeting every single time he made a payment late.
You had no control over it.
I had no control over it. And really my only option at that point was, if I wasn't also paying on that debt and the debt that was in my name, I would have to file bankruptcy, and I just couldn't do it. There was no way I was ever going to get out from my parents' house and be able to raise 2 children on my own with having to pay that amount of debt. And part of me too was just bitter, because a good bit of that debt, I did not purchase any of those things. I didn't create that debt. So it was really hard to bite that bullet and pay for something that you didn't even know what it was for, to be truthfully honest.
Yeah.
So I did a lot of research, and Ben and I had a lot of conversations about it. And we ultimately decided that the only thing I could do at that point was file bankruptcy. Ben and I were not married, so luckily it doesn't affect Ben's credit. However, it did affect our future. Knowing that I was filing bankruptcy, it meant that we couldn't buy a home together for 2 to 3 years. It meant that if we tried to get like a car, we would have to pay a lot higher of an interest rate if my name was on it. When we rented the condo, for example, we had to put down higher security deposits on the electric bill, gas bill, and a couple other utilities because of the bankruptcy on my credit report. Our cell phone bill, we just put that in Ben's name because I was just so embarrassed. I was done having my credit run and people seeing that, because I felt like the world was defining me
as the lady that got bankrupt
by my bankruptcy. Yep, yeah. Absolutely.
Brittany would I swear you felt like you were walking around with a t-shirt that said I filed for bankruptcy on it. That's how you felt. You were just so embarrassed by it, and it was affecting everything. But at the same time, I was like, look, this is you severing ties with your old life. This is you starting over. This is you getting rid of all that negativity, which a lot of it was tied to the finances and things that were in her old life. So Brittany was so embarrassed to go through with it, and I was on the other side going, hey, this is a fresh start.
Right.
We're not going to be doing all kind of big things in 2 years anyway. We're just getting started. We're trying to build a solid foundation, and I kind of want to start clean.
Right.
And so did you. And I think that's what ultimately led to finally deciding to file, because you were just so sick and tired of constantly being reminded of all this negativity in your past life. And it was kind of like lifting a weight off.
Yes. So it ended up being that way.
Yeah.
So there was all this fear and this heaviness in my chest, but then once I finally did it, it was relief. Oh my gosh, I can breathe again. And what I realized was, and this was at the time of our life where you and I both decided that our happiness could not be contingent on other people's opinions of us.
Yeah.
People thought we were crazy because we were moving too fast. People thought I was crazy for leaving behind 8 years in a stupidly unhappily marriage, but yet they had opinions about it. People had opinions about, my bankruptcy, the few people that knew about it.
There's a lot of judges.
Just so many people judging, but
they don't matter. They don't matter.
And that's what we're here to tell you.
Realize, I don't care what Joe Schmo says about me, because Joe Schmo has no effect on what I do with my life.
And Joe Schmo doesn't know the whole story.
Yeah, that, and it's just, you're going to waste so much time worrying about what other people think than actually just doing what you know is best for you, because they aren't you. You are you. So if Brittany and I come to the decision that bankruptcy is the best thing for our family, that's the best thing for our family. And I don't care what Susan thinks. I don't care what Jimmy thinks.
We don't know Susan or Jimmy, by the way.
At first that was a big role though. We were just what's Susan and Jimmy gonna think?
We were what are we gonna do?
I don't care about Jimmy and Susan.
Right. So don't worry about what other people think of you. And then B, if that happens to be like the last resort and the only thing you can do, it's the last resort and the only thing you can do.
Yeah. So.
And, oh.
No, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, definitely, steps on, do you think you should file bankruptcy? Did you do a budget? Like, plan out all the numbers. And I did that. Mm-hmm. I looked at my income. I looked at all of my expenses. I looked at what my life would look like if I had an apartment and bills. And at the end of the day, I just couldn't afford it. I tried calling my creditors and seeing if there was anything that I could do to help restructure the payments, maybe come to a settlement agreement. Like I had a couple grand from some real estate transactions. Like, would you take this amount if I paid it today? I tried doing all these things that you see online that they tell you to do. And the thing of it is that if the debt in itself, so like, there was a couple different credit cards or loans that my name was associated with, but they were all under $10,000 each. So the debt collectively was over 20 grand, but it didn't matter. Creditors, if you owe them less than 10,000, they don't want to settle. They don't want to work with you. If it's over that, then they're more willing to budge. I couldn't get them to reduce my interest rate. Like there was nothing. Nobody was willing to work with me. I remember crying in my bank at the time, not who I bank with now, because I had been banking with them since I was 16 years old. And when you pulled my credit report, everything that was in just my name, paid on time, I was in good standing, was always paying more than the minimum, had paid stuff off, like everything in just my name was great. It was the stuff that I was co-signed on only that was ridiculously late, like 120 days late. And then I had to pay a chunk of money to get it caught up. Mm-hmm. And it didn't matter. Like my story matched my credit report and they could have cared less. They didn't want to help me. So, you can do all of those things. But at the end of the day, like if your budget isn't going to allow it and there's no way for you to pay extra on that debt, because the only way you can get out of credit card debt is if you're paying extra. You got to pay more than that minimum credit card payment, more than that loan payment to get ahead.
Yeah. If you life rarely throws you a bone.
Right.
In situations like that.
And if you just can't do it and bankruptcy is your only option, what I want to tell you is it's not the end of the world. So
filing for bankruptcy is not, there's light at the end of the tunnel. That's what you're saying.
There is light at the end of the tunnel. And I was so afraid to talk about it. And this is kind of a funny story. So I started openly speaking about my bankruptcy by accident. And I took this bold class for KW. And you had to like write on a piece of paper one day, like a goal of yours. And I wrote down about my bankruptcy, and I thought this was something that we were keeping for ourselves. Like I didn't.
You thought it was private.
I thought it was private. Like, oh, just tell yourself this thing in your journal, and you can look back a year from now and see like if you achieved it. And then the bold coach starts walking around and he's collecting it, and I'm like about to panic, like oh my gosh. And he took my paper before I can even like think about how to handle the situation. And then after he collects everybody's papers, he's like, and I'm going to share these with your team leaders. And so that way, yeah, he was like, that way they know like what your aspirations are and what your goals are. And I was just vomiting like on the inside, like, whoa, I was freaking out. So the next day I was like, okay, I got to talk to Dave. Like, I can't let Dave read this on a piece of paper without, like, some background. Like, I couldn't just let him see this. And because, again, I was so fearful of other people's judgments.
Yeah, like, you thought it was going to affect your job. Like, you thought Dave was gonna see that you filed for bankruptcy and be like, you know what, I don't think you belong on this team anymore. And that was a big pressure on you. But, like, that's not what happened at all.
No, not at all. So Dave was super awesome about it. He actually, commended me for being open and honest with him. And then he also just said, that's a lot for someone to go through. Mm-hmm. And the fact that not only did I go through a divorce, then had to file bankruptcy, then I jumped ship and changed careers and went into real estate full time, which is a commission only job.
It's craziness.
he even said to me, he's like, even though I know real estate is successful, I don't know I would have done what you did.
He was like, that's a bold move. And that took a lot of balls, and I don't know if I could have done it.
Dave didn't say balls, but he didn't say that.
That's how I talk. Sorry.
Yeah, but he definitely, said like, that's a huge thing to go through in someone's life. And just to be clear, like, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn or anything, but they say that going through bankruptcy is like, they put that on the scale with going through a divorce or losing a loved one, the amount of stress that it puts your body through. Mm-hmm. And that's why I was down to 103 pounds at that point in my life, because I was going through a lot. My focus wasn't on hunger. I wasn't even hungry. Like, I wasn't hungry.
About other things, like the normal human things that you feel started to get clouded.
Exactly.
And you're just like, money, money, money.
Yeah.
Got no money.
So then, anyway.
Sorry,
I don't know what that is. I don't know what that was about. But anyway. I love you. After I came open with Dave, I started to realize, and maybe it was because of how well Dave took it, I could kind of thank him a little bit for that. I realized that it wasn't so bad. Like, he told me a story about someone he knew that went through bankruptcy, and it just started to normalize it a little bit for me. And then
like, you're not the only one that's going through this. Like, everybody has financial struggles. Like,
exactly.
Like, half the world does.
Right.
And doesn't.
There's amazing statistics on it. Bankruptcy claims have gone up a lot from just 1980 to now. And a lot of those bankruptcies are people who make about $30,000 a year or less. And at the time that I filed, I was making $30,000 a year or less. I was also a single mom going through divorce, and 64% of people who file bankruptcy are married. I was separated, but the debt came from marital debt, so that completely makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. But basically, the more I started to talk about it, the more I realized a lot more people have gone through it. Yeah. Which has kind of led us to these podcasts, because Ben and I both realized through that, or starting with that, the more we told our story, the more we realized more people had gone through it too, but they were just afraid to say something, because everybody feels so alone.
Yeah, and then people start coming out of the woodwork like, yeah, I experienced that too. And then they share their story. And then as people learn from their story. So, like, it's just this domino effect of learning and knowing that, like, you're not doing this by yourself. And, like, we want to create a community where, like, you can talk about things like this. Mm-hmm. And we'll be the first ones to talk about it, no problem, because we just feel like we have nothing to hide. Like, I have a terrible financial past. But Brittany and I have figured out how to get through it. And I think that we're not fully out and on the other side and fully financially successful, but we're not hurting real bad like we were before. Like, we are cleaning it up, and we're cleaning it up well. And we wanted to share this because, like, even in Brittany's real estate career, like, she has become the person that her whole real estate team refers people to if they've gone through, if they're single moms and if they're going through some financial hardship. Like, Brittany is the one that gets those clients. So we just wanted to publicly share this story and talk about, that bankruptcy is not the worst thing in the world. There is light at the end of the tunnel. You just have to take a certain amount of steps to get your life back on track and in the right direction.
Exactly.
So with that said, like, what do you think are the pros of filing for bankruptcy? Like, if you're a single mom just off a divorce, like, what did you gain from filing bankruptcy?
So a huge weight was lifted off my chest. For one,
you were just like, jumped off the cliff and now you're falling, and
all of these, just so much better. Like, all of the stress of me being like, how am I going to pay all of this off? Just went away. Mm-hmm. And knowing that I was going to be able to move out of my parents' house and get my own apartment and care for my children on my own was enough in itself. Yeah. Like, being able to do that gave me this freeing feeling that I can do this.
Yeah, I think the only rebuttal to something like that is, like, not everybody that's filing for bankruptcy has been in your situation where, like, it wasn't your fault. and you were always really good at paying things on time and stuff like that. So what would your advice be to somebody who's filing for bankruptcy because they just weren't on top of their stuff? Like somebody like me that just doesn't really understand the system, doesn't care, they just got behind and didn't take care of themselves financially. Like, what would your advice be to that? Is there something that you can create? Like, I wanted to mention this before the podcast, but I forgot to. I was like, is there a spreadsheet or a system that you can create that will help somebody, like, to pay things on time or to remember?
Yes.
All right. I think we should do that.
I will never judge anybody. I don't care why you're in the financial situation that you're in. And
she obviously won't because she married me.
Well, here, let's take this one step at a time. Okay. So can we get to that in a second?
Yeah.
What I want to tell you about bankruptcy is you shouldn't file unless it truly is your last resort. However, if that's what you have to do, know that it's not the end of the world. I was able to buy a car 6 months after my bankruptcy was discharged. Ben and I were able to buy a car together. I did ask them to run it with my credit on it because having that loan is going to help me repair my credit, as is it's going to help repair Ben's. Mm-hmm. And our interest rate was a little higher than somebody with good credit who hasn't filed bankruptcy, but that's the price I'm paying to rebuild my credit. But I was able to buy a vehicle. Yep. You are able to open credit cards again within 6 months of filing bankruptcy. Your first thought is, why would you get a credit card after you've already filed bankruptcy?
Because that's what repairs your credit.
Yeah, I'll get to that in a minute. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, the most important thing to me is, it's going to be on my credit for about 7 to 10 years that I filed bankruptcy. With that said, I am able to still buy a home under FHA loan programs within 3 years of after my bankruptcy is discharged. So there's still hope for you. You can start over. You can build your credit back up. You can, as long as you're making your payments on time, and that's imperative. Like, no messing up this time around. Like, you have got to be on time with every single payment ever in order to accomplish getting a car, getting a credit card, most importantly, being able to buy a home. But it is possible. So I wanted to say that first. I have created tools, simple spreadsheets. Ben and I have tried using special apps. At the end of the day, they ended up not working properly. So we're kind of going old school, and we built some Google Sheets, or I built some Google Sheets that Ben and I use.
Yep. I did not have a hand in that.
That tracks our income, our expenses. And then I also have another sheet that's attached to that has all of our due dates for all of our bills on it. That I can definitely make templates and share with everybody that they can use just to help make sure that they're staying on track. When you are paying off debt, so if you're trying to pay off debt and not trying to file bankruptcy, I highly recommend Dave Ramsey's snowball effect. What that means is that you're going to take your debts, and I want you to list them all on a piece of paper, every single debt that you owe. So it's student loans, credit cards, auto payments, whatever you have that's considered a debt, list it down. Then I want you to put it in order from lowest balance to highest balance. So if you have a car and you only owe $5,000 on it, and then you have student loans of $30,000, I want you to put the car first and then the student loans. Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Okay. What you are going to do is you're going to list your income and all of your debts. You're going to figure out how much money you have left over after all of your payments every month, and you are going to put anything that is left over after groceries, your utilities, whatever's left over, you're going to put it on the debt with the lowest balance. So say your car payment's $200, but after you pay all of your bills, you buy your groceries, you pay your utilities, always remember to feed your family first. I don't want your family to starve when you're doing this. Say you have left over $100 a month. Instead of using that $100 a month to go out to eat, or, whatever, you maybe buy new shoes, put that extra $100 on your car payment that month. You're going to slowly see that balance go down a lot quicker than if you just made that $200 payment. Mm-hmm. When that car payment is completely gone, now you can put the $100 plus the $200 car payment all on your student loans because that's your next in line. And you're just going to keep going down the line until all of your debt is paid. Dave Ramsey also recommends always having $1,000 in your savings account before paying on debts. Then once your debts are all paid, then you can work on building your emergency fund. So that's baby step number 3, and that's what Ben and I are on right now.
That's what we're on right now. We're working to get 1 month emergency fund right now, and our goal is 6 months.
Yep. 3 months for salary workers is recommended, 6 months for commission-based or self-employed folks like ourselves.
That's us. We are self-employed.
So there are ways to not have to file bankruptcy where you're just budgeting and like really working hard to pay off your debt, and that's what I would recommend first. But if you're in a situation such as mine, where there is no choice, I just want you to know that it isn't the end of the world. My credit score has gone up about 100 points since my bankruptcy was discharged. My bankruptcy was discharged in March, right? Was it March or May?
I think it was March.
Yeah, March of 2019.
So we're not even a year through your bankruptcy.
Right. Not even a year later, my score has already come up 100 points.
And mine's come up like 100 points.
Yeah. And another thing that I'd like to add is there's a lot of scams out there that will say, hey, pay us, I don't know, I think people pay like $100 a month and they're going to repair your credit and help you repair your credit. Don't do it. You can do that for free. Don't pay somebody money to help repair your credit.
No, that's ridiculous.
That's crazy.
That's like you're already struggling for money.
A free online resource, I would highly recommend going to daveramsey.com. Another easy resource to help figure out how to repair your credit is to talk with a local mortgage broker. So I work with a lot of lenders on the real estate side. And if you're local to my area, I could definitely refer you to them. If you're thinking about buying a house a couple years down the road, they can pull your credit, put all of your information into a module, and that module will tell them exactly what you need to do to help you fix your credit. Do not pay people to repair your credit. There are plenty of free resources out there, including us. Feel free to message me. I am not a financial expert by any means. I am not a licensed financial advisor, but I've been through it. I can at least lead you in the right direction. Plus, we can definitely give you those budget spreadsheets. I'll create a spreadsheet to maybe help with the snowball.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of free classes out there that can just teach you on budgeting, and you can kind of figure out which one is the best for you. Again, I'm a huge fan of Dave Ramsey. He does a lot of like the cash envelope system, so you pay cash for everything. Ben and I don't necessarily do that, and Dave Ramsey is very against credit cards. What I will say about credit cards is it is the easiest way to fix credit. So if you have to, once you pay off all of your debt, and if you have to get a small credit card, get one with a low balance. Don't go crazy. Get like gas on it and groceries, and then make sure you pay it off every month, and that will help you build your credit a lot faster than even like a car loan will.
Yeah.
And that's just because they're looking at your responsibility level. So it's not just do they make their payments on time, it's do they have self-control and do they not max out their credit card all the time. So just things to definitely keep in mind. But definitely go to daveramsey.com. I think that's just a great resource for free budgeting help, as well as benandbrittany.net. We'll have our spreadsheets there as well.
Yep, the ones that work for us.
And then local mortgage brokers. Do not pay for credit repair.
No.
Don't do it.
All right, awesome. Is there anything else you want to discuss?
Gosh, I don't know. What do you think?
I think
Did I cover everything?
That pretty much covered it. You know, we told our story. So now you guys know that we went bankrupt. It was the only option left for us. So if anybody's in that situation where it is your last resort, like, go ahead. Don't fear it. It's really a clean start, a fresh start to your life. It's hard. It's not easy, but it will.
But it's also not as bad as it was in the 70s and 80s.
Yeah.
Like it's come a long way. The process isn't that hard. To be fully honest, so I did Chapter 7. Chapter 11 bankruptcy is for businesses. Chapter 13 is where you basically have an attorney reorganize your debts and you make a payment to the attorney, and then that payment helps pay down all of those balances for you. That can take a really long process. I did Chapter 7, which did wipe away all of my debts, except for it does not clear away student loans, any taxes. So if you owed like money to the IRS, it won't wipe that away. It won't wipe away any past due child support or alimony. And then I chose to not file bankruptcy on my car because I could handle that payment. So that allowed me to keep my car and build my credit on that. Where was I going with that?
I don't know.
I was going somewhere.
You were going somewhere.
And then
I don't know. You lost me.
I lost my train of thought.
We were just trying to give them any kind of last.
I wanted to say something about the types of bankruptcy. And then my brain just turned off.
I don't know.
Just like the microphone kept doing earlier.
This is how much I don't know about finances and bankruptcy and stuff.
Okay.
Because I can't even pick up where you left off.
Yeah, I'm good. So when I filed, I had to take like a class online. I had to sit here for an hour in front of my computer and click through like a budgeting class. And then I had to go to court. And I was so worried about this court hearing. It took us longer to drive to the court than it did for us to sit through the hearing. Ben went with me. Remember that? Yeah. I was like, my nerves were shot. I couldn't even find my way through the courthouse because I was so freaked out. Ben was like, Brittany, elevator's right in front of you. Press the up button to go up. So you just go in and they're like, they called my name and I just stood up and he was like, is this, basically he read off my debts. He's like, is this you? And I was like, yeah, that's me. And then they were like, okay, you're good. And then we walked out. And then I got a letter 3 months later, so 3 months after your court date. Basically, in that 3-month time period, your creditors could fight it. So they could say, no, we don't think that this person's debt should be forgiven. My attorney had said that he's only had seen it one time where a creditor fought it. Nobody fought mine. So then after that 90-day period, my bankruptcy was approved. My debts were relieved. And from that discharge date forward is when you can really start rebuilding your credit and starting your life over. So that's how easy it was. One class, $1,000, a 5-minute court date, and then a 3-month waiting period. And then it was over. It was a breeze. It was truly a breeze, like all that stress for nothing.
Yeah.
So
it's not as hard as people think.
No, it's not as bad as...
It's not as intimidating.
Yeah. It's not great for your credit, don't get me wrong. It does follow you for a long time. It does get published in the newspaper that nobody reads.
Yeah, who cares? That's weird. That's a weird thing about it.
Yeah.
It gets published in the newspaper.
It's public information. I think that's why.
Yeah.
But it's not the end of the world. Now I'm done. Sorry about that, folks.
That's fine, man.
I was like, where was I going?
I guess in closing, like, best of luck to anybody that's in this situation. We've been in it. We're coming through it on the other side just fine. Everything's honky-dory. And we just wanted to share. So, like, let us know if you guys are going through something similar. If we can help you in any way, shape, or form, let us know. You can join our community. You can text Ben and Brittany to 717-422-8318, and we will answer you. That's our phone number, and you get a direct connection with us, and we'll help you in any way, shape, or form we can. So thank you guys for listening. Once again, I hope this helped. Go visit benandbrittany.net and weigh in. Let us know what you think. Like, comment, subscribe, all that stuff we have to tell you to do. And we'll see you in the next podcast.
Yeah.
All right. Later.